The Yom Kippur War, Israel was caught very flat-footed, and within 5 years of that war, there was the peace accord with President Carter between Sadat and Menachem Begin. And Israel gave up what? The Gaza Strip. They gave up the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt for peace. And all those kind of things happened. I don't know what's going on. Did we lose connection here? Okay. So today, there's so much going on with this Hamas incursion. Yes. Say it one more time.
It happened right before the Richmond gathering.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah, so he said it happened right before the Richmond gathering. So what's important here that I just want you to get, we're going to go over some of the current events that are going on, but if you could just jot down these couple of verses. When we're talking about the wars that have happened, if someone was from Nepal or they were from Singapore and they came to the United States and they heard about the Civil War, they might think the whole Civil War was one event, okay? Rather than a series of battles, right? So from the Civil War, I should be able to look at the casualty list of just Gettysburg and Fredericksburg and tell you which battle happened where, right? If I get the casualty list for Fredericksburg, what am I going to know? Right, a lot of Unionists. And when I talk about Gettysburg, it's going to be a high list of who that's going to be dead. The Confederates. So immediately you know from the specifics what's going on. So location is absolutely imperative. Where the battle is fought. Who's fighting who. The reason for the war. Then you get to see any weather situations like hail, snow, whatever. During World War II, there's lots of that. Civil War, lots of that going on. Napoleonic Wars, that's how Napoleon lost all of his people going over to Russia and coming back, was bad weather. Then you got anomalies like earthquakes. And you also have the outcome of the war, what takes place. So we're talking about this battle that's emerging. A lot of people are quick to jump the gun and go where? To which passages from Scripture? Yeah. They want to lump it all together and say it's Armageddon, it's Ezekiel 38, 39. We're looking for Russia to come down and take a spoil. And I'm like, we have to be very discerning because the whole Christian world is saying this, but it's misleading. There are actually 14 qualifiers. I'm writing a professional paper on this, working with Tanner Hawkins, to showcase the fact that none of the conditions in Ezekiel 38 are true today, not one. And I'll be glad to share with you that by email if you'd like. So we need to separate that. It's a different location than this is being fought. It's different players. So today we're going to focus on a couple chapters. If you've got a pen, write them down, and then you can do some examination on your own. They're mostly with threes in them, okay? So it's Psalms 83, Isaiah 63, which is the man coming up from Basra, trampling the winepress, Joel 3, Habakkuk 3, Obadiah 1. Obadiah 1, it's just one chapter. Yes, there is a verse 3 in Obadiah 1. Okay, so it starts with Psalms 83, then Isaiah 63, then Joel 3, because that's God saying, I'm going to bring these nations into the vat, and it says multitudes in the valley of decision. I will, swing the sickle for the harvest is ripe. It corresponds with Obadiah 1 because he's going to wipe out Edom, okay, which is a neighboring state. So this first war is fought with the nations just right around Israel, okay? And that's also the one that doesn't really fit, I'm sorry, is Zechariah 14. So that event ties in with this because it's the immediate war. It's when Christ first appears and puts his feet on the Mount of Olives. And it's where half Jerusalem is taken, and you can see the incursion by Hamas has just happened, where they sent over 2,000 rockets. You all are very familiar. It's been a week since it happened. And all the devastation, the kidnapping that's gone on. And all of this has drawn international attention from all of Europe, from almost all of North America, including Canada and the United States, from the Pope, from all the nations in the Middle East, from Russia, and many other places. So I want to quickly go into this. So when we talk about the nations that are neighbors of Israel, they're often called proximal states, right? They're often called near neighbors or near countries. And it's from Deuteronomy where he makes this distinction. He says, namely the gods of the people which are around you, nigh unto thee, or far off from thee, from the ones from the ends of the earth even to the other ends of the earth. So there's the nations that are right around Israel, because they have the Mediterranean on one side, and then there's the ones that far away. And it's important we understand this. I'm not going to read this, but I'm just going to let you look at it, because it tells us which nations are far away and which ones are near. So when we're talking about the battle in Isaiah 63, Psalms 83, Joel 3, Obadiah 1, Habakkuk 3, what we're looking at is a snapshot of different vantage points of the same battle. And why do we know this? Because the language is contiguous. It uses the same metaphors of treading a winepress. Habakkuk 3 is the saints coming up with Christ from Teman and destroying those nations. So this tells us from Deuteronomy a lot of information about what's near and what's far. And that's all in Deuteronomy chapter 20. Now, this is always very testy, very difficult. I keep in constant contact with several different people, including Miles and Tanner, and I'm like, how you prove this stuff is very difficult. So when we look at Psalms 83, let's all turn there, okay? Every single comparison at the end of the chapter, shockingly, goes back to Judges, okay? At the end of all these chapters, it says, like Zeb and what's the other guy? I forget his name. Olmec, because of the no. So will these enemies be defeated. And it goes back to Gideon when he defeated the Midianites in Judges chapter 6 and beyond. So the Midianites were the ancestors of whom? Well, Abraham first was married to Sarah, then she died, then he married Keturah, and Midian was one of the descendants of her 5 sons, okay? So Midian was evil towards Israel in the time of the Judges, and the comparison is, and this is what I got from Tanner, and I thought this was so good, he said, in the time of the Judges, there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. In Israel today, there's no king, and everyone's doing what's right in their own eyes. We're waiting for a king, but this same kind of oppression is what we saw with the Philistines. It's what we saw with all these other nations that were oppressing Israel because of their unrighteousness in Judges. And today they're surrounded by their enemies. So the Hagarenes in Psalms 83 is lower Syria, okay? So it's not the whole thing. Asher is Iraq. Persia is obviously Iran. Saudi Arabia, only the lower part of it, with Oman and Yemen, would be considered Sheba and Dedan, okay? But that plays a part in, like I said, Ezekiel 38 and 39. It is not in any of the other passages I've given to you. Yes?
Is Hagarenes descendants of Hagar?
No.
Okay.
No. That's a common mistake Tanner and I were talking about. I thought it was fine. So Ammon and Moab were the countries they were told not to worship their gods. That was during the time of the judges also, and during the time of the kings, that they worshipped Chemosh and Molech. Chemosh and Molech required human sacrifice, and they had temple shrine prostitutes, both male and female. So those things produced unwanted children. When you had these unwanted children, you got rid of them by offering them up to Molech alive in the fire. So these nations were the ones that God told them, do not intermarry with them, do not have anything to do with them. Tyre was the one who was responsible for capturing the Jews and selling them as slaves to the Greeks. So all of this stuff is in these passages. So if you guys don't mind reading loudly and fast, because we've got a lot of material to go through, and just read the whole thing. You don't have to keep trading around because I've got passages for everybody. So let's start with Psalms 83, if I could get someone with a strong voice. Robbie Scott. Psalms 83.
Do not keep silent, O God. Do not hold your peace, and do not be still, O God. For behold, your enemies make a tumult, and those who hate you have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people, and consulted together against your sheltered ones. They have said, come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more.
Okay, that's exactly what they've all said. Everybody in the Middle East. 1948, the Independence War. The rhetoric was, let's push them into the Mediterranean. They just escaped the Holocaust. Let's finish them off. That was their attitude in 1948 during the Independence War. The next one was 1956, was the Suez Canal incident. It was secret meetings between the British and the French. They invited Israel to do a fake war so that they could come down and take the Suez, okay? That was a precursor for the 67 war. So even though we don't think much of that war, it was an absolute exercise for Israel to realize, we can take the whole Sinai. We just did. So in the 67 war, that one was lightning fast. They found out about it immediately, and that's how they got the Sinai Peninsula, the Golan Heights, the West Bank, and I said the Golan Heights, all the rest of that territory, but it became a problem because the Palestinians have always been there. So the UN has more resolutions against Israel than any other country, saying it's an apartheid state. But nobody from the entire Middle East wants the Palestinians in their country. So keep reading, I'm sorry.
For they have consulted together with one consent. They form a confederacy against you, the tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Gebal, Ammon, and Amalek, Philistia with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria also is joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot. To deal with them as with Midian, as with Sisera, and as with Jabin at the brook Kishon.
Okay, so real quick, this is when, in Judges chapter 6, Gideon was told, go in the strength that you have and defeat Midian. Okay, so let's review what the conditions were in Israel at that time. They couldn't live in the valley. They had to live in a cave. Every time they planted something, what happened to it? The Midians sent raiders and took everything. So when we find Gideon, he is threshing wheat on a wine press because it's the only way he can do it without being noticed. What is Israel doing right now? The people who are civilians, they're hiding in the ground. What were the Midianites doing to the Israelis in Judges 6? They were hiding in the ground. So you've got the same thing going on as it did with Gideon in this time period. And then it mentions Sisera. We know about Sisera, don't we? There's a little tent peg involved with a lady named Jael who served milk. So that whole incident is brought to bear in this chapter because they're asking God, do this. Do what you did to Oreb and Zeb. Do what you did to Sisera on this occasion. So that's what Psalms 83 is asking for. Nail Israel's enemies to the earth through their head. Literally, that's the analogy being made. Go ahead.
As with Jabin at the brook Kishon, who perished at Endor, who became as refuse on the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb and Zeb, and like Zeb, yes, all their princes like Zeba and Zalmunna, who said, let us take for ourselves the pastures of God for a possession. O my God, make them like the whirling dust, like the chaff before the wind. As the fire burns the woods, and as the flames set the mountains on fire, so pursue them with your tempest, and frighten them with your storm. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek your name, O Lord. Let them be confounded and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be put to shame and perish, that they may know that you, whose name alone is the Lord, are the Most High over all the earth.
Excellent. So the piece that is about Zeba and Zalmunna is when Gideon was chasing them, and that's in Judges chapter 8, verses 5 through 21. If you want to look at it, we don't have time to go into all of that. It's just a reference point. But all these go back to the book of Judges. And what Tanner and I were talking about is like, isn't it interesting that every single one of these incidences goes back to the time of Judges to tell us, defeat their enemies like you did this person and that person from the story. Now let's go. Thank you for reading that. Tanner Hawkins. He lives in Missouri. He married Robbie Bennett's daughter, and they have a child of their own, very new. He's just brilliant. He took over all the stuff that Harold Lafferty was doing before. Like, that's how we became friends, is like as soon as Harold died, because I've been helping Harold for years, and then when Harold died, we migrated all the stuff over to Tanner Hawkins' site. So he does a prophecy letter, and if you all are interested, I'd be happy to give that to you. He's 25 years old, and he's like brilliant. I mean, just got a mind like I will never have. So let's go over to Isaiah 63. Can I have a strong reader for that? Volunteer, I'm going to pick on somebody. Yeah, and Daniel is too. So, all right, David, I'm going to give you Joel 3.
The whole chapter?
Yeah. Let's see. Maybe I can shorten it. Yeah, just read from 1 through, gosh, it's so dark up here. 6. That'll do.
Who is this who comes from Edom in crimson garments from Basra? He who is splendid in his apparel, marching in the greatness of his strength. It is I, speaking in righteousness, mighty to save. Why is your apparel red, and your garments like his who treads in the winepress? I have trodden the winepress alone, and from the peoples no one was with me. I trod them in my anger, and trampled them in my wrath. Their lifeblood splattered on my garments, and stained all my apparel. For the day of vengeance was in my heart, and my year of redemption had come. I looked, but there was no one to help. I was appalled, and there was no one to uphold. So my own arm brought me salvation, and my wrath upheld me. I trampled down the peoples in my anger. I made them drunk in my wrath, and I poured out their lifeblood on the earth.
Excellent.
I will recount the steadfast love of the Lord.
Thank you very much. So you've got some analogies made in Psalms 83 and this. So Psalms 83 takes us back to Judges, all during the time of Gideon and his 300 pot bangers. And then in this one and the other one, it talks about a storm and a tempest. And this one introduces the idea of the winepress, trampling the grapes like trampling the nations. So now let's jump over to Joel 3, which I'm going to give to David Pinkston. And this one has the opposite of what's on the United Nations building. So first of all, Amos was the one who coined the phrase, the day of the Lord. And he says, why do you ask for the day of the Lord? It's a day of darkness and gloom. And Joel 3 tells us the why. God is judging all the nations who hate his people and his land. So the land is his, and it will never be anybody else's. In Leviticus 25:23 is where God says, the land is mine. And he says to the Jews, you're just tenants. You're just tenants on my land. Very clear that this is God's land. So there was a land for peace deal. What do you think God thinks about that? Rancor and indignation. So this is his judgment against the nations who've tried to divide his land and have persecuted his people. So go ahead, David.
You want to read the whole chapter?
Well, how about through 16?
For behold, in those days and in that time when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. And will
Okay, so
judge
that right there is an important piece. Where's the location?
the valley of Jehoshaphat.
Right. So that's recorded in the Kings and the Chronicles. Jehoshaphat, I believe, was the king who marched out with all of his people singing. And he says, this is the Lord's battle. You don't have to fight anybody. And they march out to the battlefield, and their enemies are all dead. All of them are dead. And they have 3 days of spoil bringing them back. I think it's chapter 22 of 1 Chronicles. I can't remember exactly. But so this valley of Jehoshaphat is another historical piece that's being brought forward and saying it's going to be like this. So we had Gideon from Judges 6 through 8, and now we're getting a picture of this king who marches out with everybody singing, and there's nothing but the dead left. So continue reading from Joel 3.
And will judge them there for my people and for my heritage, Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they may drink. Yea, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Sidon, and all the coast of Philistia? Will ye remember me? Will ye render me a recompense? And
So
if ye
mine says, are you paying me back or trying to get even with me? And I will quickly bring retribution on your heads. But keep going, sorry.
And if you recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head? Because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my precious things. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians, that ye might remove them far from their border. Behold, I will raise them out of the place to which ye have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head. And I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the men of Sheba, and to a people far off, for the Lord hath spoken it. Proclaim this among the nations, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears, and let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves, and come all ye nations, and gather yourselves together round about. There cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the nations be wakened, and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there will I sit to judge all the nations round about. Put in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get down, for the press is full, and the vats overflow, for their wickedness is great.
Okay, stop there. Sorry, stop there for just a second. Okay, so what is on the United Nations is to turn your swords into plowshares and your pruning hooks. This is the opposite of that. This is saying, take your farm instruments and make weapons out of them. We'll come to you just one second. So when the nation of Israel was coming out of Egypt and starting to take the land, what happened over and over and over again with the nations and the kings, 31 kings, that were in the land? When they heard about Israel coming, what did they do? They mobilized everybody. It's like, let's all go to war. And there's a reason for that. If anybody stayed at home, Israel would have double the effort. This way, God was able to wipe them out completely when Israel came against them. The same thing is happening here. He's saying, okay, come on, Bring it on. All you nations that hate Israel, come at the same time, because I'm going to slaughter you all for your hatred of my people and dividing my land and selling my children as slaves and prostitutes. So it's very clear here that he is calling them all to battle. And you see that one piece that's similar with Ezekiel 38, but nothing else is. So continue reading, but he's giving you, when you have an arraignment in court, you're guilty or not guilty. In this situation, he is leveling the charge of why he is trampling all these nations in the vat of his wrath. So go ahead.
Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. The Lord also shall roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth shall shake, but the Lord will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel.
Yep. And in the next part, if you look at verse 19, and there's another one. Yeah, it basically 19. Egypt will be a desolation. Edom will be a desert waste because of the violence done to it. So it tells you what's going to happen to the people of Ishmael and Edom right here. And you see that in Obadiah 1. That's all dedicated to that. We're going to go there in just a second. So now let's flip over. You want to read Habakkuk 3? Oh, yeah.
If God worked the way he did with Jehoshaphat's adversaries, that would be viewed externally by the world as biological weapons. Chemical weapons leave signatures, but it would, if he wipes everybody out at night, imagine the West Bank.
Oh, I
they're
see.
all
They're going to
dead.
interpret it as that.
Yes, and
Gotcha.
what do we hate more than really nuclear war is biological weapons. So
Yep.
that's the kind of thing that could turn the whole world, even if it's a miracle. However, it's indicating there it's more like an environmental type of mass destruction. So anyways, just some thoughts on that.
That would be very interesting because I could easily think of it in those terms. Can I get a reader for Habakkuk chapter 3? Anyone? Martha? 1 through 15.
Prayer of Habakkuk, the prophet, according to Shigionoth. O Lord, I have heard the report of you and your work. O Lord, do I fear. In the midst of the years, revive it. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy. God came from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran.
So that was the missing piece for me for years. I was like, why do they keep thinking all the saints have to come up from this area of the desert into Israel? And it's Habakkuk 3 that really defines it. I was given Exodus 33 and Psalm 68, and they're just recounting the Israelites at Mount Sinai. So I was like, that doesn't apply to modern times. It's not a prophecy. This is. And so this is why this is a really powerful passage, is Habakkuk 3:3. So continue, sorry.
His splendor covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. His brightness was like the light. Rays flashed from his hand, and there he veiled his power. Before him went pestilence, and plague followed at his heels. He stood and measured the earth. He looked and shook the nations. Then the eternal mountains were scattered. The everlasting hills sank low. His were the everlasting ways. I saw the tents of Cushan in affliction. The curtains of the land of Midian did tremble. Was your wrath against the rivers, O Lord? Was your anger against the rivers, or your indignation against the sea, when you rode on your horses, on your chariot of salvation? You stripped the sheath from your bow, calling for many arrows. You split the earth with rivers. The mountains saw you and writhed. The raging waters swept on. The deep gave forth its voice. It lifted its hands on high. The sun and moon stood still in their place at the light of your arrows as they sped. at the flash of your glittering spear. You marched through the earth in fury. You threshed the nations in anger. You went out for the salvation of your people, for the salvation of your anointed. You crushed the head of the house of the wicked, laying him bare from thigh to neck. You pierced with his own arrows the heads of his warriors, who came like a whirlwind to scatter me, rejoicing as if to devour the poor in secret. You trampled the sea with your horses, the surging of mighty waters. I hear, and my body trembles. My lips quiver at the sound. Rottenness enters into my bones. My legs tremble beneath me. Yet I will quietly wait for the day of trouble to come upon people who invade us.
Excellent. So what this is saying is they're going to come up from Mount Paran, which is here, through Edom, and then back over into Israel. Okay? So this is the path. It's kind of like an S from this area of where they're coming up from Teman and Mount Paran. Jason, are you able to do Obadiah 1? Everybody keeps asking me that the whole chapter. It's only one chapter. It's a short book. Let me go there. Well, the Edom's judgment is the first part, which is 1 through 9, and then Edom's sins against Judah is recorded. That's the charges against them through verse 16, and then the judgments against the nations is right after that. But you don't have to read the future blessings of Israel, which is from I can't read this, from verse 19 forward. I'm sorry? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Obadiah 1, 1 through 18.
All right. The vision of Obadiah. Thus saith the Lord Jehovah concerning Edom. We have heard tidings from Jehovah, and an ambassador is sent from among the nations, saying, Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the nations, thou art greatly despised. Pride of thy heart hath deceived thee, O thou that hast dwelt in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, Who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou mount on high as eagles, and though thy nests be set among the stars, I will bring thee down from thence, saith Jehovah. If thieves came to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? Would they not steal only till they had enough? If grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some gleaning grapes? How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden treasures sought out? All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee on thy way, even to the border. The men that were at peace and with thee have deceived thee, and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread lay a snare under thee. There is no understanding in him. Shall I not in that day, says Jehovah, destroy the wise men out of Edom, and understanding out of the mount of Esau? And thy mighty men, O Teman, shall be dismayed, to the end that every one may be cut off from the mount of Esau by slaughter. For the violence done to thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. In the day that thou stoodest on the other side, in the day that strangers carried away his substance, and foreigners entered into his gates, and cast lots upon Jerusalem, even thou wast as one of them. But look not thou on the day of thy brother, in the day of his disaster, and rejoice not over the children of Judah in the day of their destruction, neither speak proudly in the day of distress. Enter not into the gate of my people in the day of their calamity. Yea, look not thou on their affliction in the day of their calamity, neither lay thy hands on their substance in the day of their calamity. And stand thou not in the crossway, to cut off those of his that escaped, and
Okay,
deliver
so
them.
They got in trouble for this a couple times. One was when the Babylonians took them over in 586 BC and brought them, and they attacked them and helped them out. They did it again, I believe, in 70 AD. It's kind of like the French helping the Nazis during World War II. They packed up all their Jews and sent them to Germany and Poland for extermination. They were eager to do it. And so were the Edomites. They couldn't wait to get rid of them and get them out of the land. And it's all because of jealousy. So I hope you noticed, again, it mentions Teman here, which ties it in again, that he's moving up from that area into this. Okay, so we covered, I think, the major scriptures that all tie together. So as we've talked about, Iraq is Asher, and Jordan is Edom, Ammon, and Moab. The Bedouins are Amalek, and Saudi Arabia are the Ishmaelites, of the descendants of Ishmael. So right now, Iraq, in the recent news, they basically are allies with Iran. Yemen has threatened the U.S. over the intervention in Israel. And Yemen is a proxy war state between Iran and Saudi Arabia. They're both funneling money, training, weapons into that country. Iraq reaffirms full solidarity with the Palestinians of Gaza, and a multi-war now threatens Israel with fire from Lebanon, Syria, from the Jerusalem Post. So all these nations around about, Hezbollah is attacking from the north, Hamas from Gaza. From the west, believe it or not, Taliban has asked permission from Iran, Iraq, and Jordan to send troops to take Jerusalem, which is pretty amazing that all this is happening. Although they have not directly entered the war, this position would say we can expect them from prophecy to get involved. Jordan has basically said, don't let these people out of here. He does not want the Palestinians moving around. He's got enough of them in his own country, and they're a huge problem. Yes, Jesse?
A recent article that explains an Iron Dome missile costs $50,000 to $100,000, whereas the rockets that they're shooting, they can shoot 9 at a time out of a rocket launcher. They cost less than $1,000 a piece, and most of that is the cost of smuggling the materials in. And Iran pays for all that. They have an unlimited number of those, but just think of how this is taxing Israel. They're just firing these missiles in, and Hezbollah to the north has a lot more missiles than they have. They haven't nearly fired all their arms yet.
Exactly.
Like a third or a quarter of their rockets they have launched from Gaza in. And then Hezbollah to the north has way more armament, so it's a daunting situation.
Can you send me that article if you find it? That'd be awesome. So Jordan is, of course, saying, we'll be the peacemakers. Turkey saying, we'll be the peacemakers. Da, 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 da. Everybody acts like they're the peacemakers. Why is this not a situation where you can make peace? Because you got a terrorist group and a nation, the nation of Israel. And there's like, there isn't going to be peace between these two. Yes?
Well, because Hamas and Hezbollah's entire goal and objective is the complete and utter eradication of all Jews, right?
Absolutely.
And if that's their goal, then no matter how many peace talks you say, oh yeah, no, we'll give you this land for that, or there will be no peace because that's not their goal. Their end goal is the complete and utter destruction, which is why they were so excited when Jews were coming back to the land, was because, oh, now we don't have to go across the whole United States, Africa,
Nice.
Asia, and all these other places to try to get everything.
Yeah, it's incredible because that's what we've seen in all these threes, Psalms 83, Isaiah 63, Joel 3, Obadiah 1, and Habakkuk 3, is they're all saying, let's destroy them as a people and wipe them out. So Jordan is going to play a role of mediation, but as in the past, they're likely to be forced to choose a side. And if indeed they're watching at the onset of the Arab-Israeli war, we know which side they will choose. Golda Meir met with them so many different times and asked them to stay out of the war. And it was like, we can't. So Jordan is never really a strong country, but it's always following the lead of somebody else. In 67, their involvement cost them everything. They lost all their military stuff, all their planes, because they gave it to Egypt, and Egypt, lost them all to the Israelis. So the Bedouins of the Negev are another one to watch from Psalms 83. Amalek is said to take part in this war, and from the best maps I can find, Psalms 83 was written around 1000 BC. The Amalekites inhabited what is now called the Negev. This is part of southern Israel and is home to many Arab Bedouins. These are the only people I can see relating to the latter-day Amalek. I must therefore presently conclude that they will join their Arab brothers in the Psalms 83 war. As of yet, no word has been voiced in their part or relation to the current conflict. But I can recall some new articles from previous months that shows the Bedouin population in the area increasing. So a lot of the Arabs are trying to keep the Palestinians where they are. Egypt has made a deal with Israel that they'll let the Palestinians come in temporarily to receive humanitarian aid, because I was just in the middle of this week, I think that the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, basically told everybody in northern Gaza to move to the south. 1.4 million people. If you did that in Virginia, 95 would be clogged forever and nobody would get past Fredericksburg. It's just a mess. People on foot, people on animals, people in cars. So Saudi Arabia was just this close to making an Abrahamic Accord with Israel. And now all that's kind of tabled as far as I can see because of this. So as many. Yes, I was so excited about that. So the $6 billion that have been freed up by Congress of their assets in the United States was given to Qatar, and Qatar said, we're not going to let them have it. Basically it locked it all up. So there's just a ton of things going on. Saudi Arabia is trying to force the peace that should be there. The Ishmaelites inhabited the land of Midian, which is on the road of the Red Sea. This is where Moses lived when he fled from Pharaoh. So, and Iran is obviously involved because they were told by Russia just recently, they said, go ahead and tell all your proxy nations to attack Israel. That was in a news article from Putin and all those guys. So just yesterday, I believe, the Syrian front has opened up with Hezbollah coming down. The United States has also sent in a huge amount of weapons, but Iran has basically trained Hamas and has denied any part in it, even though we know that they were very active in supplying armaments and all the rest of it. And 126 hostages are still being held by Hamas. And they have so many different wounded and all of that to think about. This is the area that's been impacted. It's only 5 kilometers wide from Israel to the Mediterranean Sea. And they're attacking from the north. And what they're doing is they're looking for Hamas underground, because that's where they've been hiding. And this is the protected area that they've been looking at first for this first incursion, to make sure that they're looking for where Hamas is. So this is just extremely exciting times. I wanted to put this map up here. This is the international reaction to the attack on Israel by Hamas on October the 7th. So the blue strongly condemned Hamas and supported Israel. And the call for de-escalation, but not siding with Israel at all, is all in gray, okay? All those nations in gray. Then the ones who supported Hamas and said, oh, this is great, what you did, those are all over the Middle East. They're in Singapore, they're in Venezuela. So you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe anybody would approve of this. But you had a contingency of Europe, North America, parts of South America, Australia, India, and Japan that said this was evil by Hamas and supported Israel. Russia, China, a lot of the Middle East and North Africa and Mexico, as well as Brazil, all said, just de-escalate the situation. And then all these other countries basically sided with Hamas. So there's a lot to watch. around the world. We'll stop there for today, but please keep reading those passages because this could lead to Psalms 83. I'm not saying it is Psalm 83. We just want to keep a watchful eye, and I'm going to go back to the map really fast. We want to keep a watchful eye on these pieces. So that will help us figure out, their response and who's doing what in this war, but they're all immediately around Israel. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts they want to share? What you've read in the news? Yes.
It's definitely going to lead. Now, directly, and how directly is the question, but all these events do lead to Christ's return.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't know the exact sequence of that, but we should never dismiss it as, oh, that's not part of the history that leads up to Christ's return.
Right. I'm just trying to say it may lead us into Psalms 83 and just to keep a watchful eye on the situation as it progresses. Because it should give us hope and it should inspire us, but we also, as believers, need to be praying for Israel earnestly. I mean, they still got 100 and however many people that are kidnapped, and I can't even imagine what their lives are like. And so many people who have just lost loved ones, and so many people who are hiding underground. So it was humiliating for Israel, especially with all the intelligence they're supposed to have, but you kind of feel like this might happen before Christ returns so that they will need the Lord. They'll need him to come to their defense. So thank you guys.
Welcome.